All right, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Grab Your Torch with Caleb and Joel. We're
What
here to
up?
talk about season 48 of Survivor, which is crazy because we skipped a season because of just general busyness. So sorry
Yep.
about that for any of our loyal fans that don't exist. But
That's all right. They're
but
out there for
anyways,
sure.
yeah, we just want to dive into this premiere. What are your like initial thoughts?
I think this premiere, we didn't really go through Survivor 47, but I think we should give a brief overview of like our thoughts.
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
I think Survivor 47 was even a step further than Survivor 46. I think Survivor 46 was like personally my favorite season of the new era. Especially like rewatching it, Banu is not like you can kind of get through Banu. Like you're just like but then the rest is just nuts. I think 47 is like a step with that as well. I think the cast overall is very good. I like there's not like one dominant person. Like even Genevieve wasn't even like that dominant of like a strategic player. And I've been saying it for a long time. I wanted a physical winner to win. Like it's been so long, and it was really fun to see Rachel of all people, someone who's not in that archetype, to go on to win. And I think this season's kind of set up almost in a very similar way. We have a lot of physical competitors this season. Like everyone seems like huge. Like every woman is like super fit. Like every man is just massive. And like I feel like we're in for a pretty good ride so far. And I think we see more of the same from this premiere.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think to go back to like season 47, I really enjoyed the season as a whole. I think I agree with you. Like I think 46 is better just because like I love like Survivor Gabon and I feel like that's just like a
Yeah.
modern version of Gabon to some extent. There's a couple like unwatchable episodes like the back-to-back Banu ones. But outside of that, it's a great season. And then season 47, I think is just very consistent all the way through. And I think it's like a lot more dynamic than like 45, like in the sense those are both solid seasons, but 45 was kind of more heavy on alliances, whereas 47 was a lot more of a fluid game. So it's kind of like whatever the modern version of that you'd like to watch, I think is whatever fits your cup of tea. So I personally enjoy 47 more than 45 just because of that. And then of course Rachel's a great winner, and then some great characters in that season too, like Genevieve for sure. Sam, I think is a great
Yeah.
player. Rome's kind of all time like flame
Gotta
out.
put Andy
Andy's
for
in there for
great
sure.
storyline.
Saul,
Oh,
gotta give Saul some love for sure. But
shout out.
yeah, I really enjoy season 47. But jumping into 48, we just got a nice premiere. Um, I thought it was pretty solid all the way through. There wasn't anything like crazy that happened that made it major talking like that made a major talking point. But I would say like the season 50 announcement kind of is overshadowing to some extent, like 48 and especially 49. So I feel like that would be something we can talk about too. And that will be something we can revisit each week because of being able to vote consistently throughout the season. So that's really exciting.
Oh yeah, it's definitely exciting, and I think a lot of people probably watch this premiere knowing that they could vote, and maybe seeing like some stuff going into 50. Because I'm like very much predicting that like at least two, three players from this season will be on Survivor 50. I don't know about Survivor 49 just because it's back to back, but definitely this season and definitely 47 recency bias. It's like just a part of casting in Survivor, so I definitely can imagine like two, three people from this season coming back.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. Like we saw in Game Changers, that's like the last non-winner all returning season. Like saw a lot of Korong, and there's also two millennials Gen X players too. So like that was all like right there. Um, and there's also several Worlds Apart players that season too. So it's just kind of like a mixture of a lot of recent seasons. And so I hope that we can see more of like a 60-40 like new era to like old school
Yeah.
in 50, but like what we're doing right now is overshadowing this premiere. So let's jump into a little bit.
Yes. So we start the game per usual. We get everyone's introductions. I liked everyone's introductions. None of them seem like too like overly crazy, kind of like the standard Survivor, like this was my journey, this is how I got here. And then Jeff coming up and being like, all right, guys, and like giving like a random speech. But I mean, per usual, if we're talking about the match chat, Um, some people got a match happen, specifically the Orange Tribe, I believe, got the most. They had two people with I think it was who was it? Christy and
Mitch. Yeah,
Mitch, yeah. Which I thought was interesting, something to point out because usually it's just like one from each.
right. But to go into like the tribe breakdowns, like I feel like purple seemed I don't even know like the tribe names, so that's kind of on me, but they seem definitely the most stacked out of all of them, like physically at least. And then they also had a lot of like we had a lot of interesting character stuff with that tribe as well. So we could talk a little bit about them if you'd like.
Yeah, I think they're definitely the most complex tribe if you go through that theory. But I also think I don't know. It's been a thing throughout the whole new era, but I feel like they're very bad at, making the tribes physically equal. Because having Joe, Thomas, and Shaheen, like those are already like three very big guys, and then you have like the women's hockey specialist, and like the other two girls are like really strong too. And so I think it was like I don't expect them to lose many challenges, but I also think they have like one of the most interesting dynamics out of the whole thing.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we can talk a little bit about that scene between like Joe and Eva, like their bond that
Yeah.
was pretty quick. I thought that was super interesting and compelling. From what I saw, um, like it was a really good like demonstration of like autism. I feel like it handled it really well, like the subject
Yeah.
matter, and didn't kind of like exploit it. I guess like they just kind of told the story and just kind of showed their perspectives about it, which was also nice. And I feel like they've kind of started turning away from like from the beginning of the new era, where it's just like so many like sob story, backstory, which kind of like drowned like the early
Mhm.
pre-merge of a lot of seasons. I think they've done a better job of like telling people stories naturally, where they can,
Yeah.
talk about it to each other and we get to hear about it from that instead of just like throwing up all these montages of like their life. And I think that's kind of a good thing because it's more natural way of storytelling in my opinion. And we get to focus more on them as people on the island and how that version of their character fits into the season as a whole.
I completely agree because I always think back to like when Hunter got his sob story and he was like, "Yeah, I was just like a med student. I had a full ride, then I wanted to become a teacher." And like had nothing to do with the game. It was honestly like as much as I love Hunter, didn't need to be in the show. But like now with like even Joe, like we just saw like Joe break down immediately. We see that this has like probably the biggest bond out of anyone in the game, and it's one of the most emotional moments like of the new era
Right.
where she's obviously just saying it because she like needs someone to trust. And like Joe like talks about his family, like he probably sees her as like a daughter figure. And like it was just so sweet. And you can just see how genuine he was in that, and how much it meant to her. And I think it's like one of the better editings of like Survivor recently,
I
where I that's such a good way to just show a dynamic. Where I think overall this episode is really good at like setting up the dynamics, especially since there's so many happening.
Right, and I we could also talk into, the Green Tribe and they set that up at the very beginning, when there's the whole thing about Stephanie talking about wanting to sit on her hands, versus playing. And then there was Say that was like, I'm gonna just go in and play. I don't care. Like, why are you stopping? Like we're here to play the game. And then everyone else is kind of like, what do we do
Oh,
here? Watching
yeah.
it go down. So in my opinion, that was kind of like one of the bigger takeaways on the episode for me. It was like the I guess the balance between like laying low and also playing hard because I think
Mhm.
it's really important. Like Survivor as the show, they're like, we want the players to play hard, blah blah, blah. And that's also good. As the fans, we also know like at the beginning of the game, it's good to kind of just chill out and not really make a big, name of yourself at the very beginning of the game. But it's really also all tribe dependent. It kind of just depends on who you're with. Like if you're on a tribe that's going crazy, everyone's going idol hunting, like you better be idol hunting as
Yeah.
well. If you're on a tribe that's all kind of get to know each other, kumbaya, you should probably stay in that mold and not try to break out of it and do stuff. So I feel like in that case, this green tribe kind of had a mix of both because we got this all see like Cedric and Justin kind of help with the idol hunt for say. and they were just kind of on board with that, and not like not everyone was all talking. But then we also had Mary and Stephanie that were under the impression that we're just kind of all get to know each other. And when they saw Sag kind of going around, they're like, okay, we gotta get her out.
Yeah.
But the guys were like, no, like she's kind of with us, you know. So I
Yeah,
thought
and
that
I
was an
think
interesting dynamic.
I fully agree. And I think that was like such a cool way to like frame the first episode as like the battle between like being aggressive and being like relaxed. And it's really interesting with Shay because like we hardly see like when she started doing that, my first thought was like Tony and Game Changers.
Yeah,
Like I'm like she's going. Like I don't see a world. But then we cut to Kevin, and Kevin's obviously like in by far and away the best position on that tribe. I think it's very impressive what he did to like regain it because usually when you go on the sweater savvy or whatever it is, like you're in a pretty big disadvantage. As we saw like last season with TK. TK didn't have that time to be social. Now he's not a great player to begin with, but he didn't have that time to be social. And then oh shoot, what's her name? Um, she's on the RHAP podcast.
Asia,
Asia, yes. She also didn't have time to be social, and now again, she also got like pretty screwed over by Rome getting every
right,
advantage. But usually that just doesn't work out. And we see with Kevin and Kyle that they both were able to like rebound. And Kevin put himself in a position where I fully agree, skipping a little, I fully agree that taking Stephanie out for Kevin was essentially his only move. Because
right,
now he's the top of the tribe. He can go any way he wants, especially with Justin also being in that middle role, which Justin didn't get big at it, but he's also like playing pretty similar to Kevin. And I think that tribe in general is like what is gonna happen. Because Mary, I love Mary. Mary's
yeah,
a
she
great
was awesome. I thought she was like a great player. I mean, she definitely got in the wrong boat, at the wrong time, and didn't really read the room well with that. Um, but I thought she had a lot of good things to say for sure.
Yeah, but I think we should shift over to Orange Tribe, which is
Yeah.
such a like I feel like not really kumbaya, but like they're all kind of like they're kind of just doing everything together.
Hmm.
Like I'm pretty sure Muscle Man does it is like a recruit for the show. Like he's like, "Yeah, I found this stuff. Do you want to like try to
Yeah.
find it?"
Yeah. Do we want to go look at it?
And like Charity was like, "I wouldn't have done that, but whatever." And but we get to see her throw out Kyle's name, and then like that kind of blew up already, where everyone already trusts Kyle, and I think that's setting up for like a big explosion at Travel eventually.
For sure. And I think after that, we saw the pivot of Camilla kind of like putting everyone like Charity on everyone's name, like everyone's radar as someone, but it's
Mhm.
throwing out names pretty early. And that kind of started the alliance between that was Kyle, Camilla, David, and Chrissy, I think, were like
Yes.
the four in that alliance. Which I'm not sure why Mitch was left out of that because he seemed to be pretty connected at least day one, He had like a
Mhm.
really good day one in my opinion, getting to know people. So that's really interesting. And he's also a Waco native, and I live in Waco, so it's pretty
Shout
cool.
out Waco.
Shout out Waco. It's a pretty small town when you compare it to, other cities and stuff. So I thought that was really interesting. Um, so it's cool stuff.
Yeah, but let's get into the I think we should get into the immunity challenge because that was a pretty like obviously purple kind of dominated and this
Yeah,
was like a standard like survivor challenge, but I felt
right.
like it's kind of rare that it kind of goes back and forth in a puzzle. Usually whoever's like in the lead like just kind of
Right.
keeps but
I guess they just could not keep it going for some reason. I don't know why, because it's the logo, like that's the one. I think they've done a logo like puzzle like every season. At least, like I feel like not every season, but at least like new eras, like they've done it like every season, like the first challenge. Like it's
and
kind of like a
I
staple.
like it.
Yeah, I like it too. It's a good first challenge, but like when they couldn't go like behind it because that's where the cameras were, they can't really step in front of the puzzle. So
Yeah.
that's why like everyone else has the strategy of pushing the puzzle together to make sure it doesn't fall over. But
Mhm.
there's whatever reason could not figure that out.
Uh, but As we know, Green goes to tribal,
Yeah.
and I think like they were definitely the most interesting tribe to go to tribal, in my opinion. I thought Stephanie was definitely on the chopping block, but like we see Kyle like kind of going or Kevin going around, being like, oh, like I'm in this group of four. Like, oh, Mary locked me up, which Mary, hey, shout out Mary for like actually making that bond because if she doesn't, I mean, there's a 50-50 shot she goes.
Right.
I'm sure Kevin put in a lot of work to be like, no.
Well, I don't know because Stephanie really did kind of mess up the challenge, but who knows how like Kevin got off scot-free because he was on the challenge too.
Yeah.
But I think for whatever reason they just kind of skipped past that pretty quickly. It's that's just kind of how it goes sometimes, you know, it's just they usually just put the blame on one person.
Yeah.
Um,
It was a
but
game of excuses, you know?
yeah, for sure. Um, and we can talk about Say having 21 confessionals, which is a record in an
I
episode.
know.
It is insane. Like I can't believe that was the case. Like I
I
was like,
genuinely think like if she like makes it, I don't know how. Like
right.
if she makes it to merge her deep in the game, we have like an all-time villain.
Yeah.
Like she's not even like it's kind of the kind of like Q where like she's not being like truly villainous. Like at Tribal, she was being mean, but like
Yeah. Yeah.
also just like explaining her point of view. And I think a villain's
Right.
best when it's like
When
they
people
think they're right.
when people just say what they think, I think is really good too for that.
Yeah,
And it makes tribal more interesting. I feel like that's something modern survivors kind of gone away from too. Like people just keep their cards really close in tribal. And I think Jeff kind of lets them, you know, at this point. Like he used to really like pry it out of people and be like
Old
ask
School
him.
Survivor, he was like, "So you're voting her out, right?" And they'd be like, "No," and he's like, "But that would make sense," like stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah. Just a lot of pointed questions, and he's kind of gone away from that. So I feel like that's kind of made tribal just kind of like, all right, you know, let's get to the point. You know, everyone's gonna just be speaking in code, and you know, they all come down to like the conversations from before. Like, there's not a lot that happens at tribal.
Yeah,
Um,
usually it's locked down. Even
yeah,
at live tribals, it's usually just like locked down, anyways.
for sure. Um, but it's also interesting for people to just kind of like say what they think about things too. And so when that's kind of brought back in this episode a little bit, I thought that was a lot of fun to watch.
I agree, and I think that tribal could have like it had a ton of potential. Like I'm at like if she hits that shot in the dark, say 100% plays her idol,
Right.
and like and then it's like,
That would
oh,
be a crazy tribal
like
council. That would,
whoa.
yeah.
Which like probably Mary goes, but like it still would have been nuts. Like anything could have happened at that point.
Yeah.
And I think let's talk about the idol, the new Beware.
Yeah, I
Um
thought it was really good.
I like
Well,
this.
we'll see a lot more of it like in the coming episodes because you know the other two tribes haven't found theirs yet. So
Yeah.
that'll be interesting. But it seems like they're all different. So
Mhm.
I think that's also a good thing.
Yeah, and I like that it's like kind of obvious. Like you walk up and it's literally like on the paddle, it's beneath the logo. Like you're like, oh, it's like a monkey. Oh, it's like a dolphin. And like once you see like two of them, you're like, oh, this is like the idol.
Right.
And so I think it really like pushes players to go find the idol, which I think is good because I feel like in some seasons, like people kind of just like don't want to be the first one to go. You because we see with Star that like they say it, they're like rule number one, you don't go find the idol by yourself on like the
Right.
first few days. And like because we've seen time after time again, someone get voted out because a game of excuses. You need to get them out because they could
Right.
have the idol, which they most likely don't. But I think this was so good. I think I like the idea of having to run back around camp, find everything, find all the letters, and then like crack the code. And I thought it was a great idol. It might be my favorite Beware so far.
Yeah, for sure. I think they've gotten a little less like beware, I guess, like to some extent. I feel like at this point, it's like you lose your vote, but it's pretty confident that you'll get it back by the time you go to tribal, like that you'll find the idol and everything will be okay. So I think a lot of people aren't as worried about that anymore. But I also like that idols are harder to find instead of just like reaching around a little bit. Oh, got an idol, you know, like that's I'm glad we're moving away from that, at least in like at the tribe phase with the idols, like when everyone has their own, with the beware advantage, we have a lot of extra steps involved, which is
Yeah.
what they used to do with the clues. But then Russell Hantz broke that. So, um,
And
yeah.
I think a huge like thing people talked about was like, oh, idols are just so easy to find now. Like especially after Ben, like everyone's like, oh, you can just find these things. And like I think with Beware now, obviously it doesn't really happen in the merge as often, but like I like the idea that like people are gonna find these, like they're easy to find now, but like there are steps past that. It's kind of like a reverse clue. And I agree. There's not really like a pressure that you're gonna lose your vote. I don't think there's been like too much of a worry since like season 44 or like 41 and 42 that like, oh no, like
Yeah,
this
with
could
the
actually mean
yeah, when they had to say
like
the phrases and stuff, like that was kind of
yeah, because then
worried
Xander
about
was
that.
just stuck there,
Yeah,
was without a vote, and he just was powerless,
right.
which crazy he survived. But like that's like what they were looking for. But now it's like I'm just gonna get get my vote. I'm just gonna tell everyone and they're gonna help me get the idol.
Yeah.
So um maybe there's gonna be some changes with that eventually, but I like this. I like that it forces people to be sneaky and it forces people to like go find the idol because I think the best moments in Survivor are with idols, which is why you should vote for idols when it comes up because I don't know why that's a vote.
I don't know if will it be a vote like idols or no idols.
I'm pretty sure it's a vote.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's gonna vote no idols. Maybe some people that are just like super ridiculous, but it's just like it's been around so long, like it's just a part of the game
Yeah.
stuff. I'm
I don't
definitely
know how you could have a returning season without idols.
no, yeah, you can't. It would be really hard to watch, I think. I think you could spend less time with them.
Yeah.
But when you do that, it's harder to stay on track, like who has the idols at what time when there's too many of them. I think that was the problem was like I remember in Edge of Extinction, at least like when Rick just kept finding idols and idols, and then he made the two fake idols, it was just like out of hand, and it's just like we got to get back to a place where we can just have like the three tribe idols and then a merge idol. Like I think that's all you need. But they hide them like they re-hide them afterwards. So
Yeah.
if everyone plays them, after the merge, it'll just be like kind of one at a time, right? So I don't know. It's
Hey, we
it
saw with the 46 that like idols could still surprise us by not being used. And also we still haven't really seen like idols being used like too creatively like since for a while now. Now we've seen it like people threaten it and like stuff like that, but like if you look at Australian Survivor for the people who haven't seen it, like people will like walk into tribal like wearing it. Like like people can be bold. And I think I would really like to see like American Survivor, like I think a returning season, like people are going to be really bold with them. And I hope that this season we already see with like Shay that like I think people are going to be bold. Because usually, like, idols don't play much of a factor until like last season.
right
Like, I think what is Rachel the only one to like actually use like an idol successfully for herself to like win and like since for a while.
for a while. Yeah.
And
I did want to talk about like the dichotomy between 47 and 48, at least to this point, with
yeah,
like after 46 and we had five people go home with idols in their pockets. I feel
hmm
like 47 was super conservative on like sharing idle information. Like Rachel zipped it the entire time she had hers until like last minute right before she played it when she told Sue.
hmm
Um, but then other than that, she just kept her mouth shut and just um I think that was a really critical part of being able to pull that off because she sold everyone like that she
yeah,
was going home. And so with Say kind of just being like, hey, I found the idol, everyone help, like help find it for with me. I'm like,
hmm
it's just really not smart to kind of bring people in. And I thought we've got to that point, again, like we returned to that point, but 48 hasn't seen 47, so they don't know like how successful it is. I mean, you can go back to, early seasons to figure out like just don't tell people about the idol and you're good. But like the lesson learned from 46 is kind of kind of
yeah,
a huge thing, I feel like.
I agree. And I think one thing rewatching 45, but I think maybe people have been taking the wrong idea that like the reason the Reba 4 got together was because they found the idol. Like I think they were already a solidified group and that definitely solidified them. But people forget that like the idol's like the reason like Austin ultimately loses the game.
It's true.
Like he never even touched Niles. She didn't even have an advantage in the game. And so they're like, oh, let's build this 4. And like what Shay's doing with the idol, but like you're the number one threat. You've made 0 bonds. And the reason D ultimately won was because she had 2 number ones at the final 3
Right.
or the final 6. And so I hope that like the rebound from like this like from 47 and 48 is that people like kind of what you said, they like go back to it. They start like be more like Rachel, actually hitting successful idol plays and
Yeah.
not trying to like, be like, hey, I have the idol and then not play it. Like,
Right.
what fun is that? Like, you can find another idol, you can win immunity. You're
Right. I
guaranteed
think
another day.
people just being willing to play idols is just so important. And I think that makes it to where when people like I feel yeah, that's what happened with 46. Like that was the crux of it. People just got so scared of playing it wrong. Like playing it wrong is better than not playing it in my because you're going home versus staying in
Oh,
the
I
game
totally agree.
and making a mistake and continue to move on and you can recover from those things. There's been so many instances of playing idols wrong. Like Tony famously played an idol wrong when he played it for LJ, at the Birch Tribal and Cagayan.
Yeah.
Um, but then he finds other things, has his bag of tricks. Um, he had a lot of other moves that kind of just like helped solidify his game and helped him move into
Yeah.
like a position to win. Like basically using his super idol that expired by telling everyone that it was good through the final four. Like for instance, like stuff like that is what kept Tony around, and that way outshined like playing an idol for LJ and not mattering at all. So,
Yeah.
um, that's one example that I can think of for sure that just
Exactly.
did not matter.
And like you can't trust anyone on Survivor. And we've seen too many times that like people just don't play it. Play it. Play your idols. Hashtag play your idols. And I think this season we're gonna see more people play it. If I had to predict, I don't see like I low-key thought Shay was gonna play it anyways. Like, but I definitely see like whoever finds it is gonna play it. I also think like we might be moving in a way where like we're trying to avoid advantages within the game. And so if you can just play it, like we saw with the amulets, they just got rid of them. And like we saw with Maria, we saw like she got rid of her extra vote. So we might be shifting towards like eventually like just getting rid of them where I think the idea of like the threat of it is more important than the actual thing. Where we saw with Operation Italy. It was
Right.
not even it wasn't an idol or anything. It was like a solid it was the
Yeah.
threat of an
Right.
and so hopefully people get the right lessons from this. And I think production has hyped up 48 a lot.
Yeah,
Like
I've heard that too.
Jeff personally loves this season. And I think the reason he loves it because Jeff loves advantages. He loves craziness. He loves like these big moments. And I think like specifically the reason he likes this season is because advantages are played, dangerous fun. And so if I had to predict, I can imagine like some craziness happen. And I do think a male is gonna win just off of like sheer odds, but also like the editing's really already pointed to like a man winning, where like most major relationships are between like just men in general or like a man at the forefront of it.
Right. And I feel like it's a good segue to go into season 50, like still on like the idol conversation.
Yeah.
Um, because I think we mentioned that a little bit at the beginning of the podcast about getting to vote on whether or not they'll have idols. Which I think will just be basically a slam dunk that idols will be in season 50, which is kind of a no-brainer. But I think that also opens the door for like the conversation around it too a little bit, just because um, we know how important and pivotal they are to the game. I also lost a little bit of my thought there of what I was also going to say, but I don't know if you have any thoughts about that. And we could talk a little bit about season 50 in general too.
Yeah. I think my thoughts on season 50 is that I do think unfortunately it'll probably be like 18 players, maybe 20 if we're lucky. but I don't really see a world where like we get more than like the amount of days, and it's kind of hard to like change that. I do think it's going to be two tribes, for a few reasons. I think like in general, I think Jeff wants to put in the hands of the fans, and I feel like either three tribes or two tribes are going to be a vote. But also, if they are going to put it, 18 allows you to do three or two tribes. So I think that's more than likely the option. And I think people are going to vote for two tribes. And I think that's what's going to roll. I think we're going to have idols, and I think they're not going to have rice. But I hopeful that we get to see like the next step of evolution in the game, where we've seen like glimmers of it, where like I feel like the new era is a new era. Like we've reverted back to social game. Like strategy doesn't necessarily win you the game. Your social game does, and it always has been that way.
Right.
But we've seen people like Nick who like really pushed the game. We saw Tony really push the game. And I think those ideas were solidified in the returning season after. Second chance was like when we saw meat shields,
Yeah,
which
one of
like
the biggest.
completely changed the game.
Yeah.
Survivor 40, Tony, like how Tony won the game was like the blueprint of how every like new era winner has essentially won. Of like Tony like lowering his threat level, popping up, going back down, popping up, going back down, and at the like the final six on just dominating the game.
It's just another way of saying Alec Gabler
Alec Gabler,
is
my
Tony's.
goat. He's
Uh,
coming. He's not my goat.
is
He's not my goat.
I hope Gabler can come back, but
That would be
probably
so funny. That's my hot take.
not.
I want Gabler back.
I'll see him. I think that'd be super interesting. But I do feel like there's such a difference between 41 and 40 through 44, and then from 45 to now, it's just been such a switch. 90-minute episodes is the big thing with that. But we've also just I think they're just like a clear cut difference in like the strategy and how people are playing as well, in a lot of different ways too. I just think we've seen it evolve more and more, and they're basically, I feel like Survivor's hitting their stride a little bit right now, and I hope that
Yeah.
continues and we don't have like a really down like 49 before we hit 50. Because that would be a bummer. We had that with 39. We won't talk about Island of the Idols, but
That's
um,
my head. But
yeah.
I
Um,
agree.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. But I was gonna say, I think you're right. We're hitting a stride in Survivor. I think we've also been like kind of ramping up with like the winners, because I've always said that like I think a winner definitely makes a season. Like you want a satisfying ending. The same way of like even a mid movie with like a great ending, like you'd be like, that's incredible, because that's the last thing you see. And I think like even though the winners haven't like necessarily been like the greatest strategical threat in the world, we've had like very unique winners with very unique endings. Like watching Rachel win out. Crazy. We haven't seen that since Tony didn't even win out. It's been a long time. Kinsey like randomly being Charlie was hilarious. But also like in the same way you're watching like a tragedy, like you're watching Charlie somehow lose the game over something he didn't even do. D's the most dominant winner we've had since Tony.
Right.
Jam Jam is like one of
One
the
of
best
the winners ever.
capitalists.
Yeah.
Yes, he's hilarious. And then we Alligator. What
Kind
happened?
of an anomaly.
Yeah, they've been like crazy winners. And like even Erica, like I think in retrospect, if she had a good edit, people would like her.
Well, yeah, if she had like a, Rachel edit,
A half if she had a
or
half
Kinsey
edit,
edit, if she had, half or like twice as much as what she had.
yes. I would take like 25% more Erica and then been
Yeah,
like,
it wouldn't be as big of a deal, but like we just had nothing, to go
yeah,
off.
but I think like we're getting good winners, and I'm very confident in another good winner. Obviously, all winners are great in their own right, but I think Survivor 50 will crown someone who's like I think will become a legend of the game. I think returning seasons are when like people will like cement themselves into like the history books.
Absolutely. And I think it's just been so long overdue. Like it's been since 40, it'll be, 9 seasons when we get through 49 of, you know, no returning players at all, which is kind of it is unprecedented. We haven't had that long of a stretch ever in the history of Survivor.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really interesting. Like it seems like, we can go back to Jeff's drop the four, keep the one, but it also does feel like that a little bit on how it's played out. We've seen like seasons 1 through 7 are all pretty much carbon copies of each other as well. So I think it's very similar in that retrospect. Um,
Yeah.
but like my biggest like gripe with Survivor at this point, and I know I'm preaching, to no one right now because no one's listening,
Preaching to the masses.
preaching to the masses, but it's just you can like Survivor needs like a game master basically. Like you think of like the Hunger Games, when you have
Oh yeah.
the game master that, you know, manipulates everything that's going to be a part of it and makes it new and exciting each time. But it's not like that. You do it with all the different elements that you can do, like you've done in Survivor before. Obviously
Mhm.
they're always going to be thinking of new twists, but we have so many ones that we've used in the past that we can just throw them in there. Like what happened to being able to, all right, let's this season we're gonna merge at this number instead, and we're not gonna do mergatory. You know, this season we're
Yeah.
gonna do mergatory. This season, we're not gonna have fire making. This season we will. This season we'll have a final two. This season will be a final three. Like you can, the variables can be so much. Like we'll swap the two, or we'll swap the three. You'll start at two, swap the three. There's so many different permutations that you can do, and I feel like in like the 20s and 30s they were able to mix it up a lot more. Whereas the 40s, we've seen the same format every single season, except for there being a random three-person swap in 44 and then a tribe swap in 45. That's it. I do
Yeah.
think we have a good potential of seeing a tribe swap this season. I'm not sure if that will
I
happen.
agree.
I just think like they just haven't done it very much. Like, why not? Like, I think Jeff would just be like, yeah, let's just do it. Um, but I think that's what makes the game exciting. And I saw a thing that Jeff said recently is just like in that live event that they did when they were announcing season 50 and all the hands of the fans. He was talking a little bit about wanting to have the players be comfortable, so that then they can do something crazy that
Hmm.
kind of helps them flip around. Because like if they know like, okay, there's going to be beware advantage, we know how this works, blah blah blah. When you just have no idea what's going on at all, I think
Hmm.
players will start to play it really safe and not kind of go out and do bigger moves, which is really what production wants. So I think from a game perspective, you can do some of these like switch around stuff, like throw in a one world twist, for a season,
Oh,
stuff like that. And then I think there's just a really two-sided conversation to that. I think there's both valid and um negative concerns about each side of that. I don't know. What do you
I agree.
think?
I think I fully agree with that. I think there needs to be like some level of like I don't know what's happening, even if it's like you know what, Beware's coming. Like everyone knew there was going to be idols in the game. Everyone knew that immunity, all this stuff. And I understand being comfortable, but I think like a lot of like there needs to be a threat of something. It doesn't have to happen. So I hope in general, like for the voting, that there is a final two vote because like right now, like everyone on Survivor 50, I don't think they've been fully casted, but like all the players are looking are like, oh, it could be a final two, and they won't know until they get on the island.
Yeah.
And so even if they're like on the island and they're planning for a final three, in the back of their minds are like, it could be a final two.
Yeah, knowing
And
the options is enough. Yeah.
then you have to shift your game. Instead, you have to bring two solid allies to the end instead of like building this group of three or four that we've seen nearly every season. And I think stuff like that would be more like game shifting of like more of like the threat of it happening.
Yeah.
And I think Survivor 50 is just going to be great in general. I don't really see a world where like something crazy doesn't happen, but I would like them to have like some like pre-gaming or not, like something's going to happen. And it's
For
not
sure.
going to
I think finding a good balance is just important with that. Like it's gotten so comfortable with the new era. Like there's just been such, an attachment to this format. Like I said, there's only been that one swap and then the fake swap, and that's the only differences we've had to like the format. We've dropped a couple twists, but that's not the same as like, all right, we're starting three tribe of six, we're not probably not doing a swap, we're having a mergatory, we'll probably have a double boot in the merge. Like you can start like actually planning for all that stuff as a player. Like if I was going out for season 49 here in a couple months, I'd be like, all right, you know, I'm ready to go. Um, I know what to kind of to expect. And that's not good because back in like the 20s and 30s, I don't think we had that issue of people playing too comfortably. Because even if there's different twists that can happen, they just didn't throw 100 of them at him. They just threw, a few that just kind of kept it dynamic. And I think that's all we would need, both as players and fans. Like, I think it would just make it a lot more exciting.
I fully agree. And I think before we wrap up, I think we should go through and name our winner pick for Survivor 48.
Okay, I'll start first.
Okay.
I have to go with Shaheen for my winner pick. I think he had a really good premiere episode. We didn't see, a ton of him, which is, I feel like that's kind of a good thing early on. Like if you're getting a really like heavy amount early on, you'll start to fade out probably towards the end, um,
Mhm.
or get voted out early. So I
Yeah.
thought he had like a decent amount where we got to kind of get to know him a little bit. And he just seemed like a stand-up guy and also was someone who integrated himself with his tribe really well. Like he just made bonds with everyone. I think he seems like he's a very social player as well. So I think he'll make it all the way. There's a good chance like I could also see him, people kind of taking note of that and like him getting out in like a Saul position from last season, where it's just like, man, this guy's too likable. We just got to take him out now. But I definitely think he's at least making it to the merge.
I fully agree. I think arguably every player on on the Purple Tribe makes it to merge. Like they maybe lose like a challenge, but I think the California girls are like guaranteed to like at least merge. Um, we've kind of seen with like maybe the Andy Griffith that like naming an alliance isn't like the guarantee that it used to be. But I think this one feels very different, where we've seen all three of the Spice Girls, not Spice Girls, that's a different season. California girls um, go off in their own way. And my winner pick is also from the California girls. So how
Hmm.
you think? I think it's Thomas.
Okay.
I think after watching the first episode, I don't, I think having a Thomas didn't have like a really bad, he had a pretty good
I thought he had
premiere.
a great premiere too. Yeah.
We see him like connect with Bianca. We see him essentially form the alliance. He named it. And I
Right.
think if it goes on to like be this great alliance, then like it could definitely be like or like pointing to that. And I think specifically we see that he's like, oh, I'm just working with the guys, but he's also working with a female. And he also, I feel, is the most like not the clearest threat at him. Like he has Joe, like Shaheem, like just both of them I feel like are on like equal leveling. And we see that he's trying to get Bianca into the four or into the three, but Joe gets it. But I don't I feel like Joe's more like set up to be like the reason maybe Eva goes far or votes for Eva than like I feel like Thomas is more likely to go on to win. If that makes sense. But I do think it's someone from Purple. Um, I can't really I mean, it could be anyone. We see it every season that it's the
Yeah,
most likely person.
most random, I lost. I don't think I've really done that well with winter picks, except I'd had Sam last season, so that was pretty good. But he kind of phased out toward the end. But
Yeah, the best I had was 46, and I just kind of got lucky with that one.
yeah,
I
that's
know.
good.
After that, I was like, I'm on a roll, and then it was just like, bro, who am I picking right now for 47? All my guys are out early. I think I picked Rome. I think I picked Saul, and I think I picked Genevieve, which was like actually a good pick, but
Yeah, I
obviously it didn't.
I just really enjoy this cast that we've had so far, and I'm excited to see what the rest of the season will look like. So I think that's a pretty good blanket statement. I feel like from the premiere, like to just kind of recap it. I think it's a
Pick
good cast.
Amir.
I think we're good to go. I'm excited to see how it shakes out.
I am too, bro.
All right. Well, thank everyone for watching. Please, hit the like and subscribe if you are watching. Appreciate that. And then go ahead and comment below what you thought about the episode as well. So thank you all for that. We will be back next week to talk about episode 2.
Yep. See ya.